Welcome to Women at Halftime podcast. For men and women at mid-career or the halftime of life with issues that concern you. Maximize your skills, resources, and experience to live an even more fulfilling and significant second half of life. Right here with me, Deborah Johnson, on Women at Halftime podcast.
Well, hello, Deborah Johnson with you today. This is a great subject we are going to approach. What is groupthink? Wow. If you want to start thinking for yourself and not just what the group is, you need to read The Summit, Journey to Hero Mountain. It's an allegory, easy read, and really pursuing your personal summit. It's a great book for that on Amazon in all versions. But we are going to approach this subject today. What is groupthink? And you can always see the article of this. I put the link in every single description about these podcasts, so you can go ahead and look that up and get all of the information and the links and all of that I will put into this. So that may be helpful for you down the line, that you can do even a little bit more research on your own. So we're going to approach this subject because we hear a lot about groupthink, and you may wonder, what is groupthink really? Well, according to William H. Whyte Jr., defining groupthink clear back in 1952, it's making decisions as a group, and this discourages individual responsibility or creativity. And it leads to the exclusion of other ideas with potentially disastrous results. An easy way to define groupthink is as a follow the leader exercise with an automatic trust in a forerunner. And it may be a more vocal participant that's supposedly leading you in the right direction. But however, when merely following a leader because it's easier or less apt to cause dissension, it discourages us to think for ourselves. Thus, it becomes extremely dangerous, and it hinders our growth. And it can also hold whole societies back, and it can hinder advancement. In 2005, I thought there was a very interesting statistic here. In 2000, clear back, it's as this comes out, it's a little while ago, 2005. And there was a statistic that was put forward about sheep. Now, before you get too upset that I'm talking about just sheep, I want you to listen to this. A suicide sheep jumped off a cliff, and 1,500 sheep followed the first one. And it happened in Istanbul, Turkey. I don't know why that's so hard to say, where after just one sheep jumped to his death, the other grazing sheep saw that sheep and followed. And, oh, well, those were just sheep, but don't laugh too hard. You can probably find examples of groupthink in your own life as you think back to your school and your college years. Groupthink can apply to most any stage of life in numerous situations, including workplaces, classes, and even whole communities. And I'm going to start this discussion today with an example at the high school level, because many of our thinking patterns, they originate during our formative years, and groupthink may be somewhat telling in your life upon close evaluation. So we'll evaluate beginnings, outcomes, truth, and application. So let's talk about beginnings of groupthink. I'm going to give a personal example. Back in our high school, it was a big deal. When we as seniors, we could get off campus for lunch. So we had waited years for this day. Our go-to was to go to Carl's Jr. fast food, where most everyone ordered a burger, like their star burger, and fries. However, I evaluated this choice carefully. According to Calorie King, a Carl's Jr. Char-grilled superstar burger with cheese has a whopping 920 calories. I'd have to jog almost 2 hours to burn it off. Then those small fries, those have 220 calories. But who wants just the small fries? You want the large fries, which are 365 calories. This means lunch alone could consist of 1,142 to 1,265 calories. And this wouldn't include ketchup or another drink. With this number of calories every day at lunch, I would not look very savette and good in the pants outfit I had just purchased at a major discount from a friend who worked at a pricey clothing store. So the big question is, what do you do when the whole group is eating hamburgers? Well, you bring your lunch, of course. A carton of yogurt or a half sandwich were very satisfying for my lunch, but I had to mentally not focus on the smell of the fresh burgers. Amazingly, I really didn't miss them. I also had to decide not to be embarrassed for not ordering what the so-called cool kids were eating. I still wanted to eat with them. They were my friends. But the hamburger incident, it might sound silly, but I bring it up because defining the beginnings of groupthink in your life may help you further define other instances of group thinking. Passing on what the whole group is doing for a better or more accurate outcome is a principle that can be applied to many areas of life. And we can go back to that sheep example here and thinking, those were just sheep. They're dumb sheep. They just followed the leader. They just went right off that cliff. But really, think a little harder and evaluate and go back, and you might find areas that you feel like, I was just like one of those sheep, and I just sort of followed the leader. And this is especially true today, especially with social media and people wanting to be seen and wanting to be heard. It's almost easier just to go along with that crowd of what everybody else is saying instead of doing your own research, instead of doing your own thinking for yourself. This is extremely important, especially today. And it's not new. It is definitely not new. This has been the case through history. And be a student of history, understand what this is all about, and understand how it's happened in your life. And it may be pretty revealing what you end up finding out. So let's talk about passing up groupthink for a different outcome. It's very helpful to evaluate where you'd eventually like to land, though this takes on different forms at various stages of your life. I understand this. However, stepping back to evaluate and not just to think and do what everyone else is doing, it is a valuable exercise. There are certain areas in life where groupthink can actually be dangerous, like jumping off that cliff, and extremely misleading, such as the area of science. In a recent article in Wired magazine, Kathleen Fahlberg was convicted of smothering 4 of her children to death. And she was sentenced to 40 years in prison. What was interesting was much of the evidence, it pointed to sudden infant death syndrome, the SIDS, for at least 2 children, and the others were merely unexplained. But the records noted that all of the children had heart issues. There was absolutely no piece of evidence that indicated smothering. However, contributions that could have indicated questioning that type of criminal charge were overlooked. The prosecutors, instead, they leaned heavily on her personal diaries in which she wrote about her struggle as a mother, coming from an abusive and dysfunctional family where her own father had stabbed her mother. Can you imagine? And now she, Kathleen, was now painted as a bad mother because of some of those feelings she had written down. The prosecutors, they leaned on a now disproven theory, Meadows' Law, which basically states, oh, scary, guilty until proven innocent, the opposite of what we do here in the US, of what we're supposed to do at least. This was used to emotionally convince a jury as well as the media of Folberg's guilt. Carol Garcia de Venuesa, I hope I pronounced that all right, well, she used an advanced genome sequencing equipment. Boy, those are difficult words to say. Advanced genome sequencing equipment. But this is where her training was, that she got kind of interested in this case because it was unusual. And this sequencing equipment was used to study the causes of rare diseases. And she was asked to help Folberg's legal team on one last ditch effort, or else Folberg would have just stayed in jail. At this point, Kathleen had already served 16 years in prison, part of it in solitary confinement, 16 years. Well, let's move on to our next point of the importance of finding the truth. Finding the truth is not only necessary and good for all of us as individuals, but for society as a whole. The trouble is that many times new or the right type of research will continue to be discounted because of political or personal gain, especially true today. And this is where the dangers of groupthink comes in, where it's easier just to nod in agreement instead of bucking the system. And this happened with this case. When presenting new evidence, Venuesa's expertise as a top researcher was questioned and discounted with language that was disqualifying for what she had discovered. Now, this situation happened even though she had more experience and expertise than any other of the legal court's team. But Venuesa, she was obsessive with her research. And she was trained to do this. This was her field. And she went deeper into the scientific literature and manually filtered the data instead of just relying on an algorithm. And it led to the discovery of new evidence that should have freed Kathleen. However, at this point of writing, as I'm putting this out, Kathleen's fate still remains uncertain until the court catches up with Venuesa's exemplary research. And this is the difficult side of going against groupthink, especially in any scientific field. It becomes a dangerous tool of control, of fear, and of power for an inordinate period of time, especially if in the wrong hands. And it may take a long time to unwind the false narratives when the truth is revealed, either with new research or the facts that have been discarded for other messaging. Now, this should chill people's hearts right now with a lot of our recent social media messaging that has been out and pushed in the name of science. But we really have to take personal responsibility for this in many ways. What are we personally believing? What research are we really doing? And who are we just depending on? And that's really important because messaging can be just, they can become political in focus, or they can become a narrative that just seems easier. So it's really important, not only in our society, but even in our businesses and in our lives, to make sure that we are able to step back and think, well, I don't always have to have that hamburger. I don't always have to just go along with the group. And it takes some bravery, and it takes some commitment to be doing that sort of thing. Anytime you do anything that is not exactly what others are doing. And this comes to our last point. Will the truth really set you free? I don't know, huh? Will it? When you evaluate what groupthink is and its application to your work or career, it's not as simple, as I said, as deciding whether or not to have a burger and fries. This is important. It may take erasing all of that outside chatter and the noise surrounding you that constantly tell you what to do and how to live your life. And it may even mean changing your inner circle of close contacts and friends. I wrote about this in the book, Women at Halftime, and you can get the link of that into the article as well. And also another one that I wrote about called an article called Encourage Each Other. It also may take just turning off the noise of outside influence of networks or professional organizations, at least for a period of time. As we go back to our definition on what is groupthink, it discourages individual responsibility or creativity. Now, I really want to point out, you don't have to be an artist to be creative, but you should be able to use your own mind, imagination, and critical thinking to be open to new and original ideas. And that's the root meaning of creativity. So let's apply this a little bit. What is groupthink in your life? When you come back to this, come back to defining groupthink in your life, how can you apply original thinking and the willingness to stand alone on an issue? I can't remember what anyone said about my passing up a hamburger and fries in high school. I can't. But this I can. I can remember wearing that special pants outfit for several years and feeling really good about it. The outcome was what I really wanted. And it's easier for many just to sit back and I'll just let the leaders lead. I'll let the scientists lead. I'll let them just tell me what to do, especially those who may normally not be vocally or assertive. Sometimes you're just fearful of raising your voice. However, this is important. Your skills and your experience are needed in our world today, along with a huge dose of common sense. Stand up for what is true. And if it's not readily apparent, spend time to dig and find it. Find the truth for yourself. And it may take turning down the volume of those voices and those messages bombarding you with noise on multiple media channels. But I know you can do it. And that's part of what my message is. For those at mid-career, at the halftime of life, or even in times of great change, we need your skills, your resources, your experience, your abilities to look at situations a little bit different. As we look back on our lives, I'm not 20 years old anymore, and I'm not even 30 years old anymore. But I think of all those years of experience, and as I look at some of the things our kids are doing, I'm thinking, have you really thought through that? You may not feel listened to, but sometimes you can start a conversation. So really think through this on groupthink of what it really means. Because as we go back to that beginning example of the sheep just following that other little, what's called the suicide sheep, going off the cliff, don't go off the cliff. Don't just follow. I mean, if you know the truth and it's a good leader, then you can, but make sure you do your own research. And it's not just because the whole group is going. And we all have examples. If you look back, I am sure every single listener today has some sort of example of thinking, I just didn't want to, kind of upset everything. So I just sort of went along with the crowd. Well, that's very normal. It really is, especially going through those formative years. Definitely, it's very, very normal. But if you are listening to this and you are at that stage of life, at your mid-career, and officially halftime is over the age of 40, it comes a lot faster than you think, believe me. So, but think hard for yourself. And I really, really appreciate you joining me today. I'm on every single week. Sometimes I'm going to put in some extra episodes, especially when I have music coming out. I'm going to be trying to do some live streams and releasing those as podcasts. But connect with me, women@halftime.com. Get on our newsletter, because we have an article coming out every single week, goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. And you can get onto that list. I do not spam you, and we just have the articles coming out, and I don't blast you with a bunch of messages. But it's a great way to stay connected. You also see all the new music that I'm doing, a lot of things going on, and I think you'll really, really enjoy. So I hope you've enjoyed this particular episode. It's been a lot of fun to be able to present this topic. It's one dear to my heart right now, as we have so many messages just coming at us from all sides. But it's not new. It's been around for a long time, as I mentioned as well. So connect with me further, and I will look forward to being with you next time. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. Share and follow us for new shows to inspire you and encourage you in your life's journey. You can find all of our articles and links at women@halftime.com.